The following audio recording has been designed for learning purposes only. Do not share, distribute, or provide any type of copies, or this audio lesson will not be made available to you. Good luck with today's lesson.
Was about those pop-up blockers that we were talking about at the end of class the other day. So that's something I want to do here. We've already watched a video on it, but there's a particular URL that you might want to put in your pop-up exceptions, because somebody in my other class was having some trouble with it the other night, and I just want to kind of go back through that. So yeah, turn this up here for a second.
Okay,
Yep.
so I just want to show you because I literally took a video when you emailed me and I tried it. So I went to the pop-up and then I allowed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then look what it does. Like it shows that and then nothing.
That's what it was doing to me too, and I was able to solve it through this method that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to write this up here. If you're having problems with those generic ones that they told you to put in, this one worked for me. So it's HTTPS, HTTP secure, / mylabs.px.pearsoned.com. So the generic video was telling you to, or the video was telling you to put in the generic pearsoned.com with like the wildcard in front of it. And I just went ahead and put the whole URL in. That's the main pop-up for the window for the training. And how to do that in Chrome is like this. So the video is a little bit older. So I want to step back a minute here to something newer. So I'm going to go over here and click these 3 dots. These are the same 3 dots on the first lab of the semester where we went in there and we changed to where we could download things and tell it, have it ask us where we want to save it. So I'm going to click there on the 3 dots and go to settings. That opens up a separate tab called settings up here. And then again, the video is a little bit older. It's very similar the way this is structured. But they now have these in these white boxes. I'm going to go down to advanced here at the bottom, just like the video showed. So that's very much similar again. The content settings, I think, looks a little different the way the video has it. But here's content settings in this first grouping after you click advanced. And after that, we can find our pop-up exceptions in here. Here it is, pop-ups. This is what the college has put in that works on these machines, and this is similar to what they had in the video. Like ecollege.com, mathxl.com, myitlab.com, pearsonCMG.com, pearsoned.com. Anyways, here's the wild card. You put it like in a square bracket, asterisk, dot, bracket. If that's not working, and it actually was not on my machine, if you put this full URL in there as an exception, And that's done through, you're just adding one in here, so you're just clicking add. And you come into this little dialog box here, or little box that says add a site. And if you put that in there and click add, I was able to run all of my training off my machine. There was a message that there was some issues last night on the site. Somebody sent me an email about that as well. I apologize if that was causing you a problem too. Occasionally they do have some downtime, but it seemed like it was short. I was able to get it to work through this method. So I'm sorry if that also slowed you down a little bit if you were trying to work on it last night. All right, so a exception here that should allow you to see your training window. And for those of you guys that hadn't experienced that, I'm going to log into Pearson here. I usually just type the whole thing out again. It's www.pearsonmylabandmastering.com, and then I sign in. You can also link to it if you forget that. You can link to it from our course syllabus in Canvas. I have the link in there. Go out to our course. Once I get to our course, I'm going to go to course materials on the left hand side. Since we last met on Thursday, I've added Word 2016 in its entirety. All of the assignments for Word are out there as well. Don't get confused though, because the assignment that's due this week is in Windows 10. There's only one training to do. So I'm going to click on Windows 10 and then Windows 10 simulation training. And this is the issue right here. This should appear and you should be able to get in. If it doesn't let you, like it just sort of flashes and comes back, try either the generic pop-up exception or try putting this in. See if it gets you past it. So as we were demonstrating the training, I had left off on step 3 of 26. Later today, if you haven't done this, you're going to have some time to experiment with it. I'm just going to go over some basics here today, and I'm going to give you guys some time to work on some things today. So while I've got this up, did anybody have any questions that came up about training and how it works, how the buttons work?
Just the same question about Office 365. I finished my IT lab, so.
You did the training?
Yes.
Okay.
Same here.
The Office 365 question, let me get to that in a minute. So the training, nobody's got any questions about the buttons over here. Remember, you should never click submit. I do want to emphasize that again.
I'm not getting anything popped up. Like, I logged in, it's nothing there.
Even in the classroom here? Or
Say that again?
in the classroom on this machine?
No, I mean,
Have you added yourself into the course yet?
I believe so. Because I was on that last time we did it.
Let me check. Windows 10. And then after that it's the Windows simulation training. Yep. Let's see here, let's go to this. I'm just going to open this up here as Gives me a good view of who's in there. Yep, Taylor, you're in there. So you've got yourself in the course. You don't have 2 logins by chance, do you? I've had people that did that before. Let's log out and log back in here. Try signing in again. Did you not enroll in a course when you did it?
No, I didn't. I had the same, like, the screen you were just on.
Yeah.
We did like the first 3 steps together. Not it.
So you were in there.
Yeah.
You sure you're logging in with the same ID? I may have to take a look at that individually later.
It says that I logged in and I was able to do the assignment on my laptop, but when I do this one, it doesn't work. It's like I'm also gonna go to my other class management test
Both of them what?
both of them are the same, but because like my other class I had too.
This is really strange to me because no matter what device you log into, you guys should not have any trouble once you're in there because it's all in the cloud. It shouldn't have a issue because of a separate device. I may have to take a look at that individually here. So we've gone over how to do a training. I want to go over how to do a grader. And the reason is I'm going to click on Word here, which I've opened up. There's 4 chapters in Word. So in Windows there's only 1 chapter, and there's only 1 training. In Word there's 4 chapters. There's a training in each chapter, and there's a grader in each chapter. So there's 8 assignments in Word versus 1 in Windows. So I want to emphasize that. There's 8 times as much work in Word as there is in Windows. I'm going to use chapter 1 as an example for Word here. So I go into there. Similarly to Windows, there's a link for your Itcs for the chapter. That is if you purchase the Itcs. There's a videos link which goes over things that are happening here in this unit. And then your 2 assignments are here. So you don't technically have to click on either one of these first 2 if you didn't want to. Those are resources to help you. The stuff that's assigned is checked here with the assigned mark. So simulation training, same thing as Windows, except you're doing it for Word. So there's no difference there. The graders are different. The graders have to be done live on a local version of Office. So like Word 2016 has to be installed through the Office 365 link. And you have to have it installed on your device that you're working on so that when you open this up, you're working on it locally. In other words, it's not pretend like the simulation is. The simulation doesn't require you to have Office installed or anything. Just have to have a good browser, and your computer has to be configured and connected correctly to the internet. This one, there's a 4-step process here, so I'm going to click on the grader. Notice it says not started over there, just like if I hadn't started a training assignment. Instead of opening up the simulation window, it opens up this 4-step process. It says to download your starting materials, work on the assignment on your computer, upload your completed assignment, and then submit it for grading. So this first part, download the materials, if I click on that, it says that I have 3 files to download, and they have these long names. They all have these similar looking names, but they're all different. Usually towards the end of the name is the best place to tell which one you're dealing with. So this first one says instructions, so obviously those are the instructions for the assignment. It's just like step by step, like when I give you guys a lab. Then there's one that ends in HW here and one that ends in travel. And you notice there's a download button next to each one of them, and then there's also download all files. I'm going to recommend that you use the individual download, because if you do the one in the blue down here, it's going to download it as a zipped compressed folder, and that means that you have to extract it. So if you are good at extracting zip folders and you'd rather do it that way, you can do it that way, but I'm going to recommend doing it the other way, just since we're since we're in an introductory class and maybe you're not real comfortable with the zip extraction like we did on that first lab. When you click the download button, it's not compressed, so it's an individualized download. So before I download these, if I click download right now, because I'm in Chrome, remember, I'm just going to get the little pop-up down here, and it's actually going to go to my downloads folder on my local machine, which is fine if you want to do it that way and then copy it to your drive. I recommend that it's on your drive before you get started. However, remember, we can also change our location. I'm going to close that for a second. I can change my location by going back to where I started here. And I go to the 3 dots up there in the upper right corner. That's my settings. And then I would launch my settings. And I've already got my settings tab open here because we were working with it. Once I've launched my settings, remember I'm going to have to click advanced at the bottom because this is an advanced change. And then I scroll down to this downloads link right here where it says, by default, it's going to download to users SC238, which is what we're logged on as, downloads. If you're logged on as home and your name is John, it'd be probably users John downloads. I want to have it ask where to save each file before downloading like we did on the lab, because that way I've got control over where these things are downloaded. So I'm going to change that by just dragging that little thing so it's blue. And now it's going to ask me where I want to download things. My settings tab is open at the top. I can either close it or leave it open. I'm just going to leave it open for the moment. I'm going to go back here to course materials and click on that grader link again. Here's my 4 steps. So I'm going to click download materials. And I'm going to click the first one that says instructions, and I'm going to click download button there. And because I told it to allow me to have it ask where it should be saved, it's going to give me the prompt to save as box. If I didn't do that, it just goes to the downloads folder again, and you got a little link right here. And instead I want to make sure it's on my drive. So it still wants to go to downloads by default here, which is on the local storage device, and I don't want that, so I want to go to my drive. So I'm going to click my drive here on the left. I'm also going to go to completed assignments for this one. It's a Word assignment, so I'm going to go into Word. And at the moment, unless you guys created the Chapter 1 folder, I actually did that for my other class, you should just see Heroes Las Vegas, because we did that as a lab on Thursday. So you didn't ask it to where to save? You want to close it?
I think he's showing us how to do the grader.
Did you go here? Settings?
He's like the group design.
If you guys are using a different browser, remember it's going to be different. I'm just demonstrating it in Chrome. It's on the colored course schedule on the first day of class. Yep. And flip it over. Right there. Yep. So remember, if you're an Edge, if you were an Edge there, it's going to look a little different. You can actually just click the Save As drop-down arrow when you're an Edge after you click on it. Which is nice about Microsoft. They've always given you the option to save as somewhere else, whereas Chrome by default did not. Video on what? When you click Windows 10 and you go to the simulation training, that's going to launch that training, and when it's done, if you do it step by step, it'll automatically submit. Yep. Yep. Okay, so on the graders here, this is my instructions file because it ends in instructions. I'm not going to change any save as type, I'm just going to save it. And I recommend creating a folder for the graders, like for each chapter, so that you don't have your graders jumbled up, because it gets very confusing because there's multiple files. So I'd like make a chapter 1 folder. You might even, I don't know how you want to handle it. You might call it Word chapter 1 or just chapter 1 because it's already under the Word folder. So to do that, I'm actually going to delete mine here, just so you can see. So let's say I was like you guys and I hadn't had one yet. I could just click this button that says New Folder in my Save As dialog box. There's a button right there. And it opens up a little folder. It says New Folder, and then I can just call it Chapter 1. And then Enter.
So we have to delete the other one.
I only deleted it because it was from my other class. Yeah, you shouldn't have even had it probably unless you did something on your own. So this is what I did for my other class. I demonstrated, we went into Chapter 1 folder. So now I've got a folder called Chapter 1, and I can go to its yellow folder icon and just double click on it. And now I'm making sure my file path says my drive, completed assignments, Word, Chapter 1. So all my grader stuff for Chapter 1 I'm going to save in that folder so I don't get it confused with the other stuff. And it's still waiting to save my instructions file here. It says file name. So now that I've navigated to Chapter 1, I'm just going to click Save. If I'm in Chrome, it gives me a pop-up down here in the lower left, just like if I had saved it directly to the Downloads folder. If I wanted to, I could click on that and launch it directly, but it is saved to my Chapter 1 location. At the moment, I'm just going to download the other two and then we'll explore where they're at. So I'm going to click on the second one where it says Download. It also gives me the opportunity to save it in a certain location now. And I've already navigated to Chapter 1 where I saved this one. You can see this one's saved now. So I'm already there, so I don't need to re-navigate if I did the first one correctly. So I'm going to click Save. That means the second one is now saved. I again get a little download logo that appears over here, and it's showing me that I could launch it directly again. But I want to download the third one first, so I'm going to click the download button on the third one. Same thing, it goes directly to the Chapter 1 folder I created. You can see the first two are in there now. And this one ends in the word travel. I'm going to click Save. All three of them are downloaded, so each time I click download, I got one of these buttons here. Now again, once you're familiar with doing things, I could launch what I need off of there. But because I want to show you where things are at and make sure everybody's doing the proper file management, I'm going to go down to the bottom here to the yellow folder on the taskbar, which is my File Explorer that we've used for Windows. And on the left, I'm going to click on my drive letter. And then I'm going to double click on Completed Assignments, and I'm going to double click on Word. And under Word, you can see I have a Chapter 1 folder, and then I have the two files that we created for the lab on Thursday. So I'm going to double click my Chapter 1 folder, which brings me in there. And if I did everything correctly, I should have all 3 files that I downloaded. Now, I want to pause for a second here. If anybody's working along with me on the downloads, did anybody have trouble? You open up a chapter 1 folder and you don't have any files.
Yeah, I had the Pearson on the last time I was here, but now it seems like it's unenrolled me.
That's what another 2 people had mentioned. That's very unusual. Same thing?
No, I just messed up, I guess.
Okay.
What are we supposed to do if we, you know what I'm saying?
If you can't do it,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look at you individually here. We're going to have some time today and see if we can figure out what's going on.
I just don't want to be sitting on my phone.
There's a chance that we may have to, you may have to contact Pearson if we can't figure it out, because that is not normal. Okay, so you missed putting it in completed assignments. So these are the 3. Okay, so let's go to completed assignments, Word. Make yourself a new folder by clicking that button right there. And then put in chapter 1. And enter. And then let's go back to your drive letter. Select the 3 files that you downloaded. Do to drag through them, you gotta go to the left. To the left a little bit, there you go. Yep, whoops, you got contact me accidentally selected, so just deselect and try it again. Now, in the blue area, right click. And then copy. And then go to completed assignments. Word. Chapter 1. And then just right click and paste. There you go. Now we'll go back to your drive and select the 3. Now we could have cut them actually and then pasted them, which would have moved them. Whoops. Close out of that. Yeah, let's hit close. Just select those 3. There you go, and then just press your delete key. And then it'll just say, are you sure you want to permanently delete? You already copied them, so say yes. There you go. Now we'll go back into completed assignments, chapter 1. And you're right where I'm at right now.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. That's an O. Okay, so once I'm in here, a lot of people aren't aware, you can actually expand the width of these columns. So there's a little gray border like between name and date modified, between date modified and type, and between type and size. The one that's between name and date modified, I'm going to hover my mouse there. There's a little drop down arrow next to name there, and I don't want to be on that, but if I go just to the right of that, I'm on that border and I get that 2-headed arrow with a line through it. That allows me to widen that column. So like I could drag over so I can see the ends of the names of these, because this is important because they are named so similarly, you're like, which one is which? So there's one called instructions, one that ends in HW, and one that ends in travel. The one that ends in instructions, I'm going to double click on that one to launch it, to open it up and see what we have here. And it's a set of instructions on how to do this assignment. It tells you to download and open the file name exwd blah blah blah, chapter 1, greater cap HW. Ensure that non-printing characters are displayed and save the file as. Now, one thing about the file names where it suggests to save the file as, it's probably good practice to follow it to a T on all the instructions. However, since they created these instructions, they made some changes. You'll notice that some of your files, when you download them from your account, they'll have your name in the front of them now. instead of like, it doesn't start in EX16. If your name is John Smith, it'll say John Smith, EX16, blah, blah, blah. So when it says to put last first, it means your actual last name and first name together, but you may already have it on the front end of it. See what I'm saying? So if you do, it doesn't grade you down by like the name of the file. When you go to submit it, it won't grade you down by the name of the file. Again, it might be a good idea to save it exactly like it is. So I'm going to follow the instructions exactly. So in your case, you'll actually have your name in the front and on the back. I'm just going to do it to a T though, just because that's what it says to do. It goes on and continues on telling you what to do, and at the end it tells you to save and close and submit. Okay, so I'm going to leave this particular set of instructions open, and I'm going to click the minimize button up here just so it's kind of out of my way. I also want to demonstrate here. I'm going to click back on this link here. I've got my 3 downloaded files. They're all green over here, so I'm going to close that little window. I'm going to go to step 2 where it says preview the steps, just so you can see how this works. What it does is it opens up a little dialog box of the steps, and notice it's the exact same thing as your instructions. Download and open the file name, greater cap HW, ensure non-printing characters are displayed, save it as, blah, 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 last first. So when you click on this little preview steps button for step 2, it actually launches a little window that's the exact same thing as your instructions that you downloaded. Therefore, it's really personal preference on which one you want to use to follow the steps and how you want to handle it. Some of my students I've noticed during the semester, they actually just open this thing up and then have another window they're working on their assignment. They go back and forth. Other people open up the actual instruction sheet and they look at that. And they have like maybe the instruction sheet on one side of their screen and their assignment on the other side of the screen. Other people use their cell phone to bring the instructions up. A lot of my students did this in class last semester when we have open days, and they're like actually looking at their phone for the instructions, and then they just have the assignment up here that they're working on. Other people print it. Like you can actually, you guys are welcome to use the printer in class or at home to print off the instructions, and then just have a paper copy of it, and then work on the assignment on the screen using the paper copy. So a lot of ways to do it. It's really your preference. So I just wanted to emphasize that that's the same thing as the instructions that we downloaded. So at the moment, we have to do step 2, work on the assignment, and then when we're done, we're going to upload it. So I'm going to do the first couple steps here on this thing. It says to download and open the file named EX16WD Chapter 1 Greater Cap HW. So I've already downloaded it, so it's here in my folder. It ends in HW, not in travel. So I want to make sure I'm opening the one that says your name, and it ends in HW, so I'm going to double click that. And it launches this file. I'm verifying that it's the one that they said to open that ends in HW. The first line of it says located on Georgia's coastline amid the Golden Isles. For this demonstration, I'm just going to kind of bop back and forth. So after I've downloaded it, it says ensure that your non-printing characters are displayed. So as we learned in class the other day, my non-printing characters are this backwards P on my home tab. So I'm going to click on that. Did you figure out how to get back in?
Yeah, I was on the wrong version of the Pearson site.
Oh.
It's portal.mypearson.com.
Maybe.
I'm about to find out.
I logged in as to www.pearsonmylabandmastering.com. That's the one I always use. So I've got this. I've turned on my non-printing characters as it recommends me to do, which shows the fact that enter has been pressed at the end of each of these paragraphs. It also shows a little dot in between the words. Now, personally, when I'm doing assignments, I sometimes turn them off even though it says to be on. But if it asks you to select like a paragraph including the return character, if you don't have them on, you can't see them. They're actually there if they're not showing and you select a paragraph and there's a little like tag, like a little extra space that you've grabbed at the end, it means you have selected it. But to be sure, if it says to do something like that, you should have them turned on and displayed. That's why they have you turn them on. All right, so I've turned them on. It then says save it as all this and then my last and first name at the end. So I'm going to do that. Now mine, because I'm the instructor, I have a generic student account. So it just says student in the front. But yours probably actually does have your name in the front. Even with that though, let's save it with the name at the end as well. So I'm going to do a file, save as. I'm going to click on browse. I'm going to go to the end of the file name and I'm going to put an underscore like it says, and I'm going to put Burkle Kurt right together there, like my last and first name. And then I'm going to click save. My title bar changes to the new file name. So it says student, blah, 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 Burkle Kurt. Yours will say, if you or me, yours probably says Burkle Kurt, blah, 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 Burkle Kurt at the other end. Now, I'm going to do a couple steps just so we kind of start getting comfortable with doing a grader. So step 2 says, place the insertion point at the end of the document and press enter. So to get it to the end of the document, like we learned on the lab, I can do a control end. That's the end key, E-N-D, not the letter N. So here I am at the beginning of the document. If I hold the control key down, which is in the lower left, and then I tap the end key, which is above my arrows, it actually takes me to the end of the document, and my cursor is blinking after the cloisters, the last sentence. Control end, like the end key, E-N-D, not the letter N. E-N-D is in the piece above your arrows. Now technically, it says to place it at the end. I could actually have put my cursor right there, but what if there's like, maybe there's some other stuff going on. So by doing a control end, I know I'm absolutely at the end of the document. So I'm after the cloisters now. It says to press enter. So I'm going to press enter to move to a new line. Because I pressed enter, the hidden character shows that I have a separate paragraph now, right there. Okay, now it says on step 2 now, insert the text from the file, and it ends in the word travel. So that's that other file that we downloaded. This step, where it says to insert the text from the file, had you already done your training for chapter 1, you would have seen how to do it. So in other words, the training is supposed to prepare you for the grader. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here because you probably haven't done your training yet. I'm just doing a demo. So I'll show you how to do this. It's actually a little bit tricky. It says insert the text from the file, ending in travel. All right, so I'm on my document. I should be positioned right there with my new line. On my insert tab. Remember where we did date and time on the lab? There's a date and time button there, but right below that there's a button called object. On the far right end over here, if you click the drop down arrow on the object, it'll say either object or text from file, and this is text from a file, so we're going to click text from file. And then it says, hey, which file do you want? Once again, if I'm not sure, because this is cutting off, I could widen this so I can see all of my file names in their entirety. And I want the one that ends in the word travel. So not HW, not the one with your name, not instructions, but the one that ends in travel. And I can either single click it and then click this insert button, or I can just double click it and it will insert the travel file into this document. So essentially I've merged the two documents together. I've put two files in one. And once I've done that, the last line of the insertion should say Texas Revolution.
There are two travel. Which one?
The one that ends in the word travel. It has to end in travel. Yep, you're welcome. Here you go.
Yeah, I'm not finding those.
What's that? The insert? You did have your cursor in the right spot, right? Okay. You're gonna go to Word. Double click. And chapter 1. Widen this out so you can see the one that ends in travel. So do this again here. Widen that column a little bit. Right there. Not the drop down, but between the two, there's a line to the right of the arrow. Nope. To the right of the arrow. There you go. Nope. To the right of the arrow. Go back. No, try it. To the right of the arrow, there's a line. Right there. Right. So the one that ends in travel is the one you want. So not that one, this one. There you go. Insert that. You got it. I'm going to continue doing a couple steps here. So I've inserted that new file into this document. So the document now ends in the words Texas Revolution. If I scroll up, the place where we did the insertion was below the words the cloisters. So here's where it started. No trip to Texas is complete without a stop in San Antonio. All right, so you've inserted that file. You've got 2 files in there now. Continuing on with the instructions, we've done steps 1 and 2. Step 3 says check for spelling and grammatical errors. When you do a spell check, you probably, or best practice is to do it from the top of the document down. So I'm currently at the bottom of this document here, like my cursor was still down here. So if I hold down Control and tap the Home key, it'll take me to the top. And it says to do a spell check, right? It says check for spelling and grammatical errors. So to do that, on my Review tab, not the View tab, but the Review tab, it's towards the right end. The furthest left button on the ribbon is Spelling and Grammar. I'm going to click that, and it launches the Spelling and Grammar checker. And it puts it over here on the right, and it says, okay, whenever you see one of these red wavy underlines, it's probably a misspelled word. So on the lab, I showed you the simple way where you can just right-click it and choose the correct word. But when you have a lot of words misspelled, it might be easier to run the spell checker like this, which runs through the whole document. So it goes to that first one, Mediterranean, and says, hey, you spelled it incorrectly, and I'm going to suggest this is the correct spelling. It looks like we're missing an R on Turanian there. So it gave us only one suggestion that it happens to be the correct one. So I'm going to click this button that says change. And it'll move to the next word, which is level. Inadvertently, an extra period was placed in there, which is incorrect. It should just say level. So it gives us the correct suggestion again. So I'm going to click change. Then it gets down to this one, which does give us multiple choices. So it says defenders. It's supposed to be defenders of the Alamo. And the first word that it suggests is definers, which is incorrect, but the one that we need is defenders. So you want to click that second one down in the list, defenders with a D, and then after you've clicked that, click change. And then lastly, this last one also gives us multiple suggestions. The Alamo became an inspiration. So it says becomes, because, but the one that is correct is became. So we're going to choose became, which is already chosen there. If not, you want to click it and then click change. Then it'll give us a message that you've run through all of your spelling and grammar checking. It says spelling and grammar check is complete. You can click OK. Going back to my instructions, after we do that on step 3, we've done the spelling and grammatical check. Use the thesaurus to identify a synonym for the word quaint in the third paragraph on the first page. Change it to charming. We did this on the lab, so you can see how there's similarities. So the word quaint in the, what did it say, the third paragraph on the first page. So I'm going to scroll up. Here's my first page. There's one paragraph, two paragraphs. It must be in this one that says the ground floor. Yep, the ground floor plays host to several quaint seating areas. And they said to change it to charming. So I'm going to right click on the word quaint. I'm going to point to synonyms on the shortcut menu. It gives us a bunch of potential synonyms, meaning similar words like old-fashioned, old world, picturesque. Charming is the one we want. That's the fourth one down. So I'm going to click charming. So we've done 3 steps, right? We've done 3 steps. At that point there, I'm going to save it. So I'm going to go up and click my save button. And the one that ends in my name there is now saved through step 3. So if you wanted to not continue with this, you could close it. And then you could continue with it later, maybe when you get more familiar after you've done some training. Some of my students have actually worked on it. You get 4 attempts on a grader. Remember, you're limited to 4 attempts on a grader assignment. So I'm going to show you what to do now. I'm going to submit it, but I've got some that I've already done before that I'm going to submit. So this one's out. If I submitted this one right now, obviously would not be a wise idea. So don't, in your case, don't do it because you've only got 4 tries. But I want to demonstrate this part so that you can see how it works. So I'm going to X out of that and I'm going to pretend that I was done. And I'm going to pretend I'm done, so I'm going to go to step 3 where it says upload completed assignment. It says all done. Now select your project file in preparation for our automatic grading and reporting process. After you've chosen your file, click upload. Your file will not be graded until you select submit for grading in the next step. So I'm going to click choose file. Obviously, if this one was done, I'd be going to the one that ends in my name. You do have to be careful about the correct file submissions because you get 4 attempts. You don't want to submit the wrong one. That's actually another reason why I increased the attempts from 3 to 4, just in case occasionally you grab the wrong one. So obviously, I was just working on this for a few minutes, so none of these are done. So I'm going to go to my one that's sort of done here on my drive. I've got a folder actually called Word Graders and then Word Chapter 1, 2, and 3. And I've got this one, which is actually correct, the one that ends in my name. And then just so I could give an example of some things that were done wrong, I got one that says wrong. So I'm just going to upload that as an example here. So I double click it, I select the one that's actually got a couple errors in it, I'm going to click upload. I get a message that says success. It tells me that my file was uploaded and it's ready to submit for grading. It's not submitted until I do this 4th step and I just click that button that says submit for grading. So I'm going to click that. And it says kudos, your file has been submitted for grading. I usually wait a second or 2 because if I click close assignment right away like that, it'll not quite have it graded yet. So I usually give it, like it takes it sometimes 10 or 15 seconds. Then I click close assignment. It flashes my screen and it comes back and it gives me a grade. It says my score was 87% on that. I've used up one of my 4 attempts, so it says 1 attempt has been used. Now notice it says passed. Remember, for this class, we talked about this the first day. On a grader, if you get 70%, you got a passing grade. However, 70 to 79.9% would be a 7 out of 10 on this thing. So you want to get at least an 80. You don't want to submit right now because it's not done. You're going to actually hurt yourself because you only get 4 tries. I'm only giving an example. So if I had, let's say, 77% instead of 87, I'd want to go back and check and try to get at least 3 more percent to get 80. Now, technically, the way I handle the grades, you actually would have 10 out of 10 on this if you had 87% because you got 80 or better. So you'd actually be done if you wanted to be done. So the only reason to go back would be, you know, what did I miss? Because maybe on a test I didn't understand it, so I might need to get a better score. Some of my students do like to try to get 100, but you don't have to. As far as the way I grade the class, 80 is good enough for me on this for 100%. So technically I'd be good, but let's say I want to go back and work on this. So I'm like, I want to find out what I did wrong. Right next to the link for the grader, there's 3 dots again. I can click that. And then I'm going to click View Submissions. After I click View Submissions, if I've done more than one submission, it would actually allow me to go to whichever submission I wanted to go to. I've only done 1 so far, so there's 1 in the list. I'm going to click on it. And it takes it a second, and it comes up, and it gives me more details. Scorecard detail for Grader Project 1. Notice the first thing it does here is it gives me the step-by-step instructions. Download and open the file named, blah, 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 and place the insertion point at the end of the document, press enter, insert text, etc. Now it goes by 100 on each of these, but your final tally on your overall course grade is 10 points. But what it does is it breaks it down. So technically they didn't give us anything for displaying the non-printing characters and stuff. But once I got to step 2 where we inserted that document, it says, okay, you've earned 10 out of 10 on that one. So I know that one's good. Next one, spell check, I had 12 out of 12. And I actually continued and did the rest of this thing here, but I gave an example here on this one. This is wrong, so I get some red highlighting here. Change the left and right margins to 1 inch, create a custom watermark, type draft in the watermark like we did on the lab assignment, set the color to blue, and the layout to diagonal. It gave me 7 out of 14 for that. So I know that I missed 7 out of 14 and I made 7 out of 14 on that step. The question is, which 7 did I get wrong though? To find that out, I click the drop down arrow. So I would click my drop down arrow and it expands this. Whoops. It expands this and it says, okay, your watermark was not detected in the submission. The engine reported the failure as the watermark was not inserted. Blah, blah, blah. My watermark was not inserted. Color wasn't set to blue. The text wasn't set to draft. So it's taken off points for each of those. Other actions in this instruction were performed and scored correctly, 7 out of 7. So when I look at that instruction, it said to change the left and right margins to 1 inch. It gave me points for that. It didn't give me points for the watermark, so I know I got to go back and fix my watermark. See how that works? So I would go back to my document that I had saved and uploaded, and I would resume from there, and I could fix the problems. Another thing that it tells me here again, on step 6, insert a plain number 2 page number. Remember we inserted a plain number 1 on our lab. This one says insert the plain number 2 style at the bottom of the page. Insert a header with Southeastern Living shown on the left. On the second line of the header, insert the document file name, which we've done those types of things. Again, it says my header's messed up. My other actions in the instructions were performed correctly. So my page number's probably good, but I've done something wrong in my header. So I would go back and I would fix these. I go, okay, I've figured out what's going on here. Of note too, you can actually take a closer look at your downloaded or submitted file by downloading it again. You can go to a live comments report. A lot of times when I'm doing these, I don't even use that tool. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to say, let's say I fix this now. So I'll go back to it. And I click on choose file. And hopefully I think I've got a good one here. Here's my one that ends in my name. I'm going to upload that. Success, your file's ready for submission, so I'm going to click submit for grading. Kudos, your file's been submitted for grading. I usually give it a few seconds. And then I click close assignment. My screen flashes, and after I've made the corrections, I got 100%. And it tells me that was my second attempt of 4. Again, I've passed. Remember, don't get confused. When you do have the passing logo over here, if you get a 70 or better, you're going to get the passing, but you don't get full credit till you get 80. Now, let's say I've gone on, I still struggled a little bit. I went on to step 3, my third submission. When you click on this for the 4th time, you'll get a message that says this is your final attempt because you've only got 4 attempts allowed to get a 70 or better. So you'll get a message that does warn you about it. My suggestion, if you did really bad, like let's say you've only got like 45% on the first one, and then you try it again, and you submit it and you get like 50%, you only get like 5% better, you might want to just go back from scratch and redo the whole thing for your 3rd try. However, if you're like, you went from 45 to like 69, you know that you probably can get a passing grade in 2 more attempts. So it's kind of, again, your call on how you want to handle the submissions. You didn't want to submit because that's incomplete. You only want to submit it when it's done. So that counts as one of your attempts. I'll take a look at it since you did it in error here. Okay, so that's how to do a grader in the course. Yep. Any questions on how to do a grader?
Good luck with today's lesson.